welcome to the Haunted Hacker podcast. It's been a couple months since I've had a an episode of podcast, and I thought I'd bring on a good friend of mine that's in cyber as well. But we're not going to have like a normal, a normal cybersecurity conversation. It's going to be mostly around mushrooms and benefits and just everything we can about mushrooms. So with that, I'll go ahead and introduce Max Justice. He's a good friend of mine, the mushroom farmer that got me inspired to go down this path of mycology. So Max, how are things going and what are you up to these days?
Nice. Well, thanks, Mike. So let's see. I guess first, I'm extremely proud and excited to say that I am Dr. Justice now. So that was a biggie for me for this year. Started January off as Dr. Justice. So that was a good way to start 2024. And just last week, something probably most interesting was that we sold our first mushroom coffin, or I should say living coffin. And in fact, I am the first producer of 100% sustainable, biodegradable, carbon negative coffins.
That's pretty
and I
amazing
plan to be a mass producer. Yeah.
That kind of plays into the whole, whence you came, like back to the earth where, really everything forms. So with mushrooms, mycelium. So I've been studying a lot about mycelium, looking at it under microscopes, growing it in petri dishes, and it's pretty amazing how that little spore can grow into mycelium, and that eventually becomes a mushroom. But the mycelium is really interesting because it helps communicate, needs from all the plants in the forest. And I didn't know that before I got involved in mycology. Like I really learned a lot about how we need mushrooms and how the earth needs mushrooms. And without them, we would lose probably a lot of forestry and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, getting involved with mycology has been really interesting. The success rate I'd heard for an amateur first time was somewhere about 10%. And knowing that statistic, and I was like, well, I should probably, start several different, types of mushrooms in order to get, a successful flush. So, I did multiple bags, rice jars or grain jars, and all kinds of stuff. And I eventually, everything is growing, and it's just amazing. But I think it takes a lot of research, and I bet you can attest to that as far as, making sure you get the environment just perfect, temperature, humidity, all that good stuff. So dive in how you got started into mushrooms and kind of, your experience starting out.
Wow. I would say that I had a very unique start. And what really got me down the path was a little over 6 years ago, the love of my life had a massive hemorrhagic stroke. And when we were in the hospital, she didn't really know who I was. In fact, her brain kept telling her was, "Don't trust the guy in the hoodie." And I was the guy in the hoodie. So I was just starting my PhD journey at the time. And what's a good PhD student know to do? Research. So I started doing all kinds of research. And if you're going to do any kind of research on mushrooms, fungus, mycology, there's a 99% chance you're going to come across Paul Stamets. And like I did, like everyone else, I found a DARPA study that Paul was doing, and it was on, he had completed a 5-year DARPA study. Well, you and I both know that DARPA does nothing for 5 years if there's not some merit to it.
Yeah.
And then come to find out there was 5 mushrooms that did amazing things to the body. One in particular was lion's mane, and lion's mane is a neurotropic, meaning it's one of the few substances known to humanity that you can ingest that helps promote the growth of brain and nerve cells. So I asked my fiance at the time, who barely knew me again. In fact, I thought I was living with what was that movie with Adam Sandler and Drew Barrymore, 50 First Dates?
Yeah.
I felt like I was living that.
Mm.
But prior to her event, we never ate mushrooms, not once. In fact, we didn't even get mushrooms on pizza. So after we got out of the hospital and we got away from the doctors, I asked her, would you be interested in trying something different, in eating some food that I think can help your brain? She's like, what's that? And I said, mushrooms. She's like, whoa, when have you ever seen me eat a mushroom? I said, never, but my love, this is supposed to help your brain. So she said, no, I don't care. I can't eat mushrooms. And so I convinced her to take a supplement. And in fact, it was the supplement from Paul Stamets's, should I get the company now? Anybody can look it up. I'm sure they'll find it. But anyway, so we got the lion's mane pills, and they were quite expensive. Like I think it was like $35 or $45 for maybe a 30-day supply. In fact, I don't even think it was a 30-day supply. So after I got her to take the pills, take the lion's mane supplements, within about a week, actually I'd say in 3 days, she started to feel a difference in her brain. And within a week, she had so much more clarity. And in fact, after 2 weeks after being out, we went back to the doctor, and her neurologist looked at her like, you are a gift from God, because you shouldn't be in this good of condition. And there was two things that got her in that good of condition: lion's mane and acupuncture. So anybody has a stroke, I'm going to wholeheartedly encourage each and every one of you to go out, eat your lion's mane, and get acupuncture. In fact, so the one reason why she needed acupuncture is she was having multiple headaches all at the same time.
Right.
And this doctor, actual MD, gave her an acupuncture between her big and second toe. And that's the only place he put it, just one needle right there. And within like 30 seconds, I watched the color of her skin come back. And like I could see it looked like a thermometer. It was amazing. So really, that's a long story around what got me into mushrooms, was that it helped my wife, or bride-to-be, recover from her stroke. And since then, it's funny, you talked about how at the beginning we weren't going to talk much about cybersecurity, but I would say we're going to talk about security, because truly, if you know anything about mushrooms, and you kind of alluded to it, it's food security. Every plant and tree living needs fungus to grow. If it doesn't have fungus, it's not growing. And in fact, fungus extends the root structure of all living plants and trees.
Yep.
So for biodiversity security, fungus is absolutely imperative that we have it. And I would even go on to say, for food security, we need more mushrooms, because if you want to take care of this vessel of the body and keep it secure, keep it performing well, keep it in optimal conditions. And oh, by the way, if you're in cybersecurity, this thing needs to be functioning in top function.
Right.
So you need to have your lion's mane daily. And oh, by the way, Mike, you said something else earlier that I want to bring in. Talked about looking at fungus through a microscope.
Mm-hmm.
If you can, and you ever get the opportunity to see a slice of a brain and the slice of lion's mane mushroom, both wafer thin, and you put that under a microscope,
They look the same.
you will have such a hard time telling the difference that even PhD candidates have a hard time telling the difference. It's really amazing.
And it tastes amazing too. I heard that lion's mane actually tastes like lobster if it's cooked right.
It has a seafood-like flavor, and in fact, we make crab or alternatives to crab cakes. We call lion's mane cakes. Mm-hmm. We make those quite often, and they're quite easy. In fact, if you just take your favorite crab cake recipe, mm-hmm. don't buy the crab, get lion's mane mushroom, break it up into what looks like lumps, meat or crab meat lumps.
Mhm.
Yeah, what do you call it? Not
Lump
chunks,
crab
or
meat.
I guess it's called lump crab meat.
Yeah.
Anyways, you tear that
Yeah.
up to look like lump crab meat. Add in all your ingredients except for mayonnaise. Add about half the amount of mayonnaise,
Mhm.
and because the mushroom has a lot of water weight,
Right.
you'll be pretty amazed at how close that will resemble an actual crab cake.
Mhm. Yeah, I
But
went.
anyways, that's food.
Yeah,
Good, man.
I went through a lot of phases when I first started out. Like I wanted to learn how to do it, so I watched all kinds of videos, read all kinds of literature. Of course, ran into Stamets on the internet, and he was actually on a Joe Rogan show, and that episode really got me going too because some of the things they talked about was pretty amazing. Like they went into the whole root structure like he did. And then Joe Rogan brought up a point. He said he had heard some scientists say that they think that fungus was from somewhere other than Earth, like it was put here, and that's what life created from. And I can see it happening because we rely on it so much. But man, talk about some of the follies that I went through when I was trying to figure out how to put this whole operation together. So I went out and got a steel tent. I got monotubs. I got petri dishes, syringes, swabs, all that stuff. And I've tried every level of propagation. I've done the petri dish with just spores. I've done like a cutting of the internal like stem of the mushroom and put it into a petri dish. And then of course I've done inoculation in grain and grow bags and stuff. And it's really amazing how once it hits at that perfect temperature and humidity, it just blooms. And the mycelium, when I talk about looking at mycelium under a microscope, it's some of the most intricate and to me beautiful structures I've ever seen. I mean, it literally looks like solid, pure white feathers at some point. Like it has a different texture to it than anything I've ever seen.
And it's one of those things that I think you can learn something from fungus and mushrooms every single day of your life and still not know even half of it.
Well, and that too, going off of that. So I have an app that will supposedly identify mushrooms that I find, right? So I go through my property and I take, pictures of, fruit that I see, growing. And nine times out of 10, 9 times out of 10, the app can't distinctly make, categorization of the mushroom. And I think the reason why is there's so many different, I guess, strains of mushrooms or types of mushrooms. And a lot of them that we see, usually the ones we get at our places, like stuff that'll grow in mulch. Nothing edible, nothing even close. Now we do have some turkey tail growing wild by our house, which is really cool. So I'm trying to swab that and do a petri dish on it, see what happens. But it's just a lot of fun, and the microscope, binder microscope, and actually looking at the spore level and then watching it go from spore level to the mycelium and pinning and hopefully I'll see fruit soon. But I think the process is very technical. And that's what I try to tell people is that if you're in cybersecurity, there's no reason why you shouldn't at least try it out, because it's a very technical hobby and you have to be good at what you're doing to be successful. And it's really interesting. And you're also helping out, humankind and nature and our food supply.
Yeah. And another way I would say that cybersecurity and mushroom farming are somewhat similar.
Mm.
So in cybersecurity, we're generally paid very handsomely. And mushroom farming is the #1 cash crop in the US.
And it's super cheap.
So you get correct, just like many cybersecurity talent out there. But the uh, not only are they both extremely valuable and needed,
Mhm.
but it requires you to ask questions and to want to learn more. If you're in this, like cybersecurity, that is a field that requires continuous learning. The same applies here to mushroom farming. If you're not continuously learning and innovative, then the world's just going to leave you standing by because there is so much that you can do with fungus.
Right.
And in fact, that's why we got into growing alternatives. We're using mushroom fungus to grow alternatives to concrete, plastic, insulation, bricks, coffins, and urns.
Mhm.
In fact, I just sold a living coffin last week. It was my first one, but now it's official. This is actual real business. I have people lining up. I shouldn't say dying to get into my coffins, but some of them actually are. Uh, but you know, I never felt so good about doing something or selling something
Right.
as much as I did a living coffin.
Right.
The family thanked me profusely, and it was so moving and touched me so deeply that that's when I was like, oh, I know this is absolutely the industry to be in.
Right.
And it just there's so many things with technology, and we have to innovate in this field if you're going to be successful. And that's one of the many reasons why I tell people we need more mushroom farmers. Less than 2%.
Mhm. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Uh, what I was about to say is there is a correlation with cybersecurity, really, because the mycelium acts like a network.
Oh, absolutely.
So you have the same issues, and with any mycelium and any kind of fungus, you run the risk of contamination, which can be like an attacker. So that's how I had to visualize it in my head in order to understand how it worked.
I think I need to write another article, something similar. I wrote a article a little over a year ago. Well, actually, I guess it's been 2 years now. No, it was a year because I was moved into this farm, and I wrote a article, 32 ways how raising chickens and cybersecurity are identical.
The cyber chicken farm.
And I think I need right. And I think I need to do something very similar for mushroom farming or fungus and cybersecurity because there's just so many similarities.
If you want to collaborate on that, I'd be more than happy to.
Nice, absolutely, and maybe we'll have our lead mushroom is Cordyceps militaris.
That
You
sounds
heard of that
good.
one?
Yeah.
So, dude, if you're not, you really should look into trying to grow that mushroom.
I will.
So,
So
Cordyceps.
the lion's mane, it took a while for it to propagate, and so I thought it was a failure. But what I realized is some of the mushrooms have a different inoculation period. But lion's mane was easy.
All
So
of them do.
yeah. So if that strain has a long inoculation period, just does it have a long inoculation period, or is it short for colonization?
So going from well, so you're probably talking. I think it's around 2 weeks in the petri dish.
Okay.
Then from petri dish to so we don't go to grain or grain spawn.
No,
We
cocoa,
go into rice. Rice is our particular uh, uh, brown rice,
Oh, cool.
not wild rice, brown rice. And in fact, I even recommend organic brown rice, which is rather difficult to get. In fact, there's like a brown rice shortage, I think, because we're constantly having to find new suppliers.
If you go to Amazon,
Um,
you can buy the mason jars already made up with the grain inside of it. And I'm not sure what
and so
It's not rice, but I'm not
We,
sure. I think it's rye, maybe.
well, no, so that is for, it could be for the psychedelic kind of mushrooms that go into still air box. It could be for oysters, even shiitake and lion's mane. A lot of those grow out on grain, a grain spawn.
Yeah, I bought two of those off the internet, and they seem to be doing really well. So one of the reasons that I wanted to do this podcast too is that the VA is starting to progress as far as testing the effects of psilocybin cubacensis on PTSD, microdosing. And,
Good, as they should.
and so to think about the fact that every VA will eventually be using psilocybin cubacensis to treat PTSD, at some point there's going to be a deregulation or declassification of mushrooms, which I think there should be anyways. I mean, it grows naturally. But it has, from what I've heard, I've never had mushrooms. So what I've heard is that taking in small doses, like a gram and a half, um, will give you kind of a spiritual experience. And a lot of people that have PTSD that have tried the microdosing or a gram and a half dose, like a normal dose, um, talk about a complete reset. Like their emotions reset, their whole mood is there's like a higher purpose. And they see a lot of stuff in I guess the trip that opens up a lot of questions about themselves and makes them it's really introspective. And so I thought, hey, if that's going to be a thing, I better get a jump start on trying to produce these mushrooms that the VA is going to be using, because there's going to be more than one contract given out to mushroom growers for the VA, because the VA is not going to grow that many mushrooms. So, but yeah, it's very helpful from what I've heard. I've known a couple of vets who've tried psilocybin, and they can't say enough about it, enough good things about it. So of course, I'm a little nervous about actually trying it, um, but I want to do it in a legal setting and really try to get the most out of it. And I think in order for me to get the most benefit from that type of treatment, I need to know how it works. I need to know from day one to the point where I ingest it, what goes on, because I have to know everything about what I'm going to do in order to do it. And so this has been a real successful experiment and really enjoyable. It's become more of a hobby now. Like I said, I've got all kinds of stuff set up, like still tents and stuff like that. And I just really got into it. My wife thinks it's funny, and she actually, we talked about it, and she wants to buy a greenhouse and start, like a legit mushroom business, selling, mostly lion's mane, portobello, stuff like that, and see how that goes here in Tennessee. And if it goes well, maybe we'll expand a little bit. But yeah, just learning from you and the things that your wife has benefited from, mushrooms. I thought there's no way I can't not do this. And so I want to thank you personally for getting me interested in mushrooming. And it's been a wild ride, but it's been fun, man. I've really enjoyed it.
Nice. It, um, it, it has been a really wild journey, and whenever I talk to other mushroom farmers, if they really go all in, the you have a much higher probability of success,
Right.
because one, we just don't have enough mushroom farmers. So there's plenty of opportunity for mushroom farmers, and uh, just your local farmers market. Just starting out, you can make $500 in 4 hours,
Yeah,
easy.
easy.
I don't even do farmers markets that I'm not averaging above 1,000 in a 4 hour period. In
Oh,
fact, I'm quickly approaching 1,500. And just last weekend, we made 2 grand, almost 2 grand in 4 hours,
yeah,
just selling mushroom products.
there's a Chattanooga market that is kind of the same thing. You have to buy a space or whatever. And it was funny because I've been going to that for 3 years and not once have I seen a mushroom farmer there. Well, I start growing mushrooms, and the next thing I know, the next weekend I go to the market and there's a guy set up selling syringes of lion's mane and blue oyster and all this stuff. And I got excited. I bought like 3 syringes. But here's the thing, those syringes that they were selling at the market were a lot more expensive than the ones you can buy online. So one
I'm
thing,
sure.
and one thing to be careful of is if you do buy syringes of, let's say, blue oyster or whatever, know that it's been put together by somebody else, and the contamination, you can't guarantee the contamination. I end up having to take send a syringe back because putting in a petri dish, it wasn't the spores, it was a culture, and the culture was contaminated. So once it hit the petri dish, it was just free for all mold everywhere. So
Right.
be really careful where you buy your supplies and stuff.
Yeah, I only go to two producers. I mean,
Yeah.
their quality is next to none. I mean, as far as they have the highest level of quality, we have the lowest contamination rate with these two suppliers, and that's probably all I ever go to as long as they're in business.
Yeah. Yeah. I have one guy that I made a connection with, and he owns a mushroom store, and it's all legitimate, like mushroom supplies and cocoa substrate and stuff like that. And so I'll grow mushrooms for him and give him spores, and he'll take the spores and regenerate. So we kind of have like a symbiotic relationship. It just kind of, it's a trade-off, really.
How far are you from Wichita?
Wichita, I'm in Tennessee.
Yeah, right. But how far is that? About four
Like
hours
like Wichita, where?
driving. Wichita, Kansas.
Oh, probably 4 or 5 hours.
Okay. Reason why I ask, my wife's mentor is out of there. And so if you're ever looking for somebody to get some high quality training as well as um, mushroom equipment and supplies, like
Mhm.
we get all their bags from him.
Oh, nice.
He's one of uh, uh, the oh shoot, the company's out of Texas for the bags. They're not Pack. No, it's not.
You're talking about
Shoot.
talking about the injectable bags?
Well, you can get injectable bags. I don't.
Oh,
Because we have a mycology laboratory, so I don't need the injectable bags. We
right.
just open them up right in front of our flow hood, which is built into the wall.
Yeah. I saw the flow hood. Someday I'll get to that point. If I can like grow successful flushes for a while, I'll probably get a flow hood.
Uh, I am pretty sure you're right on your way to doing that regularly because it's all a matter of dialing in your process.
Right.
Like with cybersecurity, you want to make sure that your processes are repeatable and that you're keeping those bad actors out. You're
Yeah.
keeping out the contaminants, and you do that by a lot of cleaning. Well, what do we do for cleaning? We do patches. We do a lot of patching.
Hmm.
So I would say that cleaning is a lot like patching because you're finding where your vulnerabilities are, and you generally where your vulnerabilities are, that's where your weak spot is, where you need to make sure that you clean a little bit more. Because otherwise, if you don't implement Patch Tuesday, you're going to have some bad actor take over your facility,
Quickly.
and it may not be human.
Right. It may look human or may look alien. I've seen some mushrooms. I took a sample of what was it? Ascaria, Amanita Ascaria, and I
Right.
dropped it into a petri dish, and in 24 hours, it looked like an alien had sprouted out of the little tiny chunk of the core. It was really weird. Like I still have it, but it looks like a bunch of tentacles going off everywhere. And I can't tell if it's contaminant or if it's just that the way that that mushroom is building mycelium.
So there's an interesting piece for you, and I doubt I will ask my investigator this question, but you never know.
Right.
So Amanita muscaria,
Hmm.
it's AKA the death cap. Now
Oh,
you
yeah.
have to eat quite a lot of them
Right.
to die. I mean, like, in fact, there are so few cases of people actually dying from this mushroom because you have to eat that much of it.
Right.
Now, I'm told, because I don't know, that it's also a psychedelic mushroom.
I've heard that too. I heard Paul Stamets talk about Amanita Scaria on the Joe Rogan podcast and how
Yeah, I think so. Right,
he had taken Amanita Scaria, and the
right.
experience was like you were saying, it was definitely psychotropic, psychoactive. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So I guess if it's just if anything psycho, you can't ingest, so it
Yeah,
doesn't matter. But
yeah. Well,
which is it's dumb.
and you take
I don't really get the war on drugs.
yeah, you take a risk with Amanita Scaria too, because at certain levels of toxin, it can become lethal. And what people don't understand is every mushroom pretty much is going to have a different level of toxin in it. You know, it's not like a guarantee there's going to be 2% in this one and 5% in this strain. No, there's no idea to tell. So they weigh it out by weight. And I don't know. I don't think I could see myself taking a gram and a half of something that could potentially kill me.
Yeah, I want somebody to go first.
Yeah, yeah. Do it before I do and let me watch you for about 4 hours and then I'll think about it.
Right, right, exactly.
And for those who
But
don't know, Amanita scaria is also the mushrooms you see on Super Mario Brothers.
which and so that's red. And now if you take that red out and put in blue, you have our mushroom.
Yep. Yep, absolutely.
It's yeah, it's pretty much the same thing. Now you said something I'd say very important. You talked about the toxins
Hmm.
in mushrooms and how they all vary.
Right.
So I'd say that even applies more so to people that go to the grocery store and they don't even know it.
Right. All the
Eighty
pesticides.
percent of right, 80% of the world's mushrooms come from China.
Hmm.
Now, here in the US, the mushroom capital within the US is in Kennett Square, Pennsylvania. It's over by Philadelphia. Now, that in Kennett Square, they're only producing about they're less than 10% of the world's mushrooms. So between China and Kennett Square, you're talking about almost 90% of the mushrooms that you're going to find in any grocery store that goes on any plate.
Right.
The important part is knowing where your mushrooms come from, because we talked about contaminations not contaminations with just pesticides, but things that are in the mushrooms that
Right.
can kill you. Well, a lot of that, the substrate that they use to grow mushrooms on that come
Sure.
from China, which, by the way, the the blocks are assembled in China with all the substrate, and then they're put on a ship and they grow them in a container. And when they get here, they're picked off of the container or out of the container. And I think they get around some type of regulation. But the important part to know about all that is the substrate that's used in China. It's very well known for containing cadmium, arsenic, lead, and other heavy metal poisons that will absolutely kill you. So it's very important for the purchaser to know where those mushrooms come from.
Absolutely. And, you know, I have two TBIs. So having traumatic brain injury, lion's mane can do wonders for TBIs. And that's one of the things that the doctors suggested was lion's mane. So that's, that was another reason why I got involved. But yeah, watching you progress and watching the things you do, I was like, yeah, I need to check that out, because if he's doing it, like, we have like minds, and if he's that interested in it and that passionate about it, then I probably have the same passion for it once I got started. And I did, because it's a complete scientific process. And that was probably one of the only classes I succeeded in school, was science. Yeah, mushrooms that
So
cool. Go ahead.
we went from, in less than 2 years' time, we outgrew our first farm, which was actually it was 2 3-car garages. I had a downstairs 3-car garage that pointed towards the river, so we kept all our water toys. And then above that, I had another 3-car garage. Well, we started out in the bottom 3-car garage, quickly outgrew that, used all 6-car garages. And like 18 months time, we outgrew that and had to move here.
Yeah, in 2 months, I've almost outgrown the garage. I've taken over most of the garage, and that's where I started, was the garage. So
I
similar.
believe it.
Yeah. So, but yeah,
We were growing 400 pounds a week in our 6-car garage.
we looked at the amount of inoculated bags and substrate that I have, and we're estimating that at any one point I should have 10 pounds of mushrooms. And that should be staggered. So I should always have that amount in a flush constantly, because I staggered the inoculations. So it should just a revolving flush.
Now, is that every day or every week? 10 pounds a week.
Oh, no, that's 10 pounds a month.
Oh, a month. Okay.
So far. So
Sure.
yeah, I'm and it depends on how much, because the amount of spores that I use, because I did everything from spore. I think I only have one through culture, but it depends on how quickly they grow, right? So, I mean, it could overlap at some point. Because what I found, like I said before, is that different strains take different time periods for inoculation, and some even different temperatures. So, it just varies.
Oh, yeah. Well, and so we talked a little bit earlier about Cordyceps militaris. So next to truffles, it is absolutely one of the reasons why it's the number one cash crop in the US. So we sell Cordyceps militaris for $60 an ounce.
Whoa.
If you do the math, that's $940 a pound. And we are undercutting our competition. Our competition, they sell it between $1,200 to $1,400 a pound, or $80 an ounce. My competition will buy it from us all day long at $600 a pound.
Wow.
So I tell you all that because, one, the community is very tight.
Right.
Last I heard, it's less than 300 mushroom farmers are growing Cordyceps militaris. And the health benefits are through the roof. Right. So a big one would be like the size of my pinky.
Right.
So there's several of them that we're harvesting to go into a gram or go into an ounce.
Right.
And in fact, once we freeze dry them, we package them in a 1 ounce package. We say that a gram, or approximately 3 to 4 mushrooms, is a serving size.
Okay.
Now, if you have the serving size before noon, you will sleep like a rock.
Really?
But if you have a serving size after 2 in the afternoon, you will sleep like a rock star.
Really? Wow.
It's, in fact, I made a mistake of having so we have a farm. There's a farm about right now, I'd say they're they're probably over there a little bit. Anyways, we get our honey from them,
Mhm.
and we actually infuse honey with cordyceps
Yeah.
militaris. We grind it up into a powder, put it in the honey.
Mhm.
And I made a mistake of having some tea. It was not green tea, just regular. I think it was actually chamomile tea.
Mhm.
But I had cordyceps militaris in the honey, and I put that in my tea. It was like 4:30 in the afternoon. I slept like shit. It was horrible. I was like, okay, I'll never do that again. So not only does it help with sleep, helps regulate sleep,
Mhm.
it gives you tons of energy. In
Um,
fact, my wife uses it for a pre-workout because it gives you tons of energy, and then she uses it a post-workout because it's also an anti-inflammatory.
oh, for lupus.
So, yes, exactly. Now, anybody hear of Lance Armstrong?
Oh yeah.
What did he get busted for? He got busted for trying to put oxygen into his red blood cells. Well, guess what cordyceps militaris does?
Mhm. That's
Puts
awesome.
oxygen into your red blood cells.
Right.
The 1976 Olympic or Chinese Olympic team
Mhm.
came out saying that we are taking cordyceps militaris, and they have been taking it ever since, and they always admit that they take cordyceps militaris.
Really.
It's a phenomenal mushroom. Now, and that's not all the benefits. It has certain cancer fighting properties.
Mhm.
And here's my favorite. This is why we call it God's gift to humanity. It improves male and female libidos.
Oh really?
Yes, sir. In fact, so we had one of our cupcake vendors at Berkeley Spring Sheet. She took some cordyceps one afternoon, and that night she said her boyfriend will never be the same.
I've heard that. I've heard it has all kinds of different benefits, and I've been thinking about growing it, but cordyceps are a little different to grow than anything else, right?
So growing them, so we first you have to know the food to feed them, and
Right.
then we feed them brown rice.
Mhm.
What not white rice? They don't grow as well. Wild rice, they're rather spotty, but brown rice seems to do the best as well. You also have some other things like peptides and so on in there. And then you put it into a dark place, no light, for it's like 3 days.
Yeah.
And then after no, 5 days, 5 days in the dark. Then after 5 days in the dark, you take it out and put it into a lit room for
Mhm.
3 weeks.
That's the stage I'm on
So
now.
yeah, 4 weeks of growing total,
Mhm.
and it loves the low 60s. In fact, it'll grow very nicely at about 58 degrees, I think it is. See, yep, 58 degrees at 65% humidity,
Wow.
using a blue light for cordyceps. And if you can set up your operation like that,
Yeah.
you've just set yourself up for success.
Yeah, I've got another tent, a still air tent that I may set up for cordyceps. Um, but yeah, another thing too, resources for people interested in mushrooming. There's a great documentary. I believe it's on, I want to say Netflix. It's called Fantastic Fungi,
Yep,
and it's probably one of the best informative documentary. Along with the cinematography is absolutely amazing.
phenomenal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you want to learn about mushrooms and all their benefits, that'd be a great place to start. Or go to Max's website, Sadist Mushrooms, and get your kit. You sell kits, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We sell 5 and 10 pound grow kits. Uh, Oysters, lion's mane, shiitake, pipino, chestnut, king trumpet, black pearl. We've got about 30 different varieties of mushrooms that we grow.
Uh, yeah, I may ask for a cutting of the cordyceps so that I could get started with that.
Oh yeah, we can hook you up.
Cool.
Easy.
All right. Anything else you want to pass along? And I've been thinking about this the whole podcast. We should come up with like a different podcast. I want to evolve the Haunted Hacker into something more regarding who I am now instead of who I was in the past. And
Right.
I think, mushrooming is my passion. I'm thinking about having, a podcast dedicated to cybersecurity slash mushrooming and, go over different species every week or whatever. So if you're interested, I'd love to have another host to help me out with that if you have the time. So think about it.
Yeah, actually, and I think tag teaming or having two hosts, having multiple people involved,
Mhm.
that's really the way to go.
Yeah,
So I would absolutely love to do something like that.
cool. Well, I will put some stuff together, put some notes together and pass your way and you can add to it and see what we can come up with. And I think it'd be great because, mushrooming is going to be the future, because if and when, I don't think it's if, I think it's more like when China decides to pull the strings and choke us on the food supply, then we're going to be, up a creek without a paddle if more mushroomers don't get involved. So,
Well, thankfully, China imports more than they export. So
right,
when they do implode, it's not really going to hurt too much. But for people that are looking to get into mushroom farm or looking for another industry or something to get into. So just to give you another folks another little background on me.
uh-huh,
I got my MBA in 2006. And from 2006 to 2018, I was trying to figure out what the hell am I going to do with this MBA?
right,
And whenever I fell into mushrooms, I was like, oh, wow. Oh
mhm,
my God, I found it. I don't want to say nirvana or utopia, but the opportunity for growth, the opportunity to impact, whether it's biosecurity and national security with food, because food is a national security of ours. In fact, we have a lot of these large industrial farms that are not doing the body any good.
right,
So I encourage people to become a mushroom farmer, do better for your community, because when your community does better, when the people around you are doing better, you will do better too.
absolutely.
So please get into mushroom farming.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate it, Max, and I look forward to coming up with our own cybersecurity mushrooming podcast. I think it's going to be good times to be had for sure. And with that, I'll go ahead and cut this one off. And Max, once again, it's always a pleasure to have you on, and I really appreciate all the guidance you've given me through my starting in mushrooming. I really appreciate it.
I love it, Mike, and don't hesitate to ask.
Cool. I appreciate it. Well, have a good weekend and tell the wife I said hello, and we'll be talking soon.
Sounds good. I take care, Mike.
Cheers.
Bye.